Hoş geldiniz hepiniz. Şimdilik azız ama umarım birazdan dolar burası. Bugün burada Jeffrey Kahrs'ın Sözcükler yayınevinden çıkan Uzak Kıyı, The Far Shore kitabının özelinde biraz Türk şiirini, çeviriyi konuşacağız. İşin sonunda, söyleşinin sonunda unuturum diye en baştan teşekkürlerimi edeyim. Önce kıraathaneye çok teşekkür ediyorum. Mehtap Hanım'a ve diğer emeği geçen herkese. Ve dileğimi de söyleyeyim. Umarım ve dilerim bu mekan ve benzer mekanlar uzun yıllar edebiyata, sanata, şiire destek olmaya, alan sağlamaya devam edebilirler. İkinci teşekkürüm ekspatlara, Türkiye'de bir süre yaşamış, hala yaşamakta olan dostlarımıza. Benim yakından tanıdığım Jeffrey Kahrs var, Donnie Smith var, Neil McDoherty var, Clifford Anderson var.
Annie McMurray var.
Evet, siz varsınız. Adlarını sayamadığım ama çok da fazla olmayan ne yazık ki ekspatlar sayesinde Türk şiiri, edebiyatı uluslararası camiada biraz hak ettiği yere ulaşmak için fırsat buluyor. Yine bizi ilk kez belki tanıştıran Tozan Alkan'a teşekkür ediyorum. Çevirmenin Notu diye bir dergi çıkarıyordu 2007-2008'lerde. Ben ilk kez Jeffrey Kahrs'ın yazısını, dosyasını, adını orada gördüm. Ve tabii ki Turgay Fişekçi'ye teşekkür ediyorum. Bu Sözcükler dergisinde bu kitaba inandı, bizi destekledi, kitabı bastı. Şimdi ardıl çeviriyle ilgili bir notum var. Hem zaman kazanmak adına hem de kulak tırmalayıcı İngilizcemi çok fazla sizi rahatsız etmemek için eğer sizin de itirazınız yoksa ardıl çeviri yapmadan yapayım istiyorum. Sonradan nasıl olsa YouTube'da altyazı olarak kaybedilen bir şey olmayacaktır, konuşma olmayacaktır diye düşünüyorum. Kıraathanenin web sitesinde zaten biyografilerimiz var. O detaylara girmeden sadece belki şeyden söz edebilirim, hani kendi hakkımda. Hayatımda 3 şey beni çok heyecanlandırdı, 3 olay. Birincisi ilk şiirimin yayınlanmasıydı tabii. Adam Sanat Dergisi'nde 86'da. İkincisi bu birkaç şiirin İngilizceye çevrilmesiydi. Yine expat arkadaşlarımızdan akademisyen Fiona Tompkinson çevirmişti şiirlerimi. Ve benim hiç haberim olmadan yine Amerika'da bir dergide yayınlattı. Bu çok sevindiriciydi. Ve üçüncüsü de bu çevirdiği şiirlerden birkaçının İngiliz Şiir Cemiyeti tarafından bulunup Alec Peever adında bir heykeltıraşa tabletlere, taşlara kazınıp İngiltere'de bir yerlere yerleştirilmesiydi. Belki de dördüncüsünü saymam lazım. Jeffrey Kahrs'la çalışmaya başlamamızdı. Aslında hikaye şöyle başladı. 2017'de Başak Ergil diye bir akademisyen arkadaş kendi öğrenci grubuyla bir şiir çevirisi çalıştayı yapmıştı. Translation Minus One diye bir grup öğrenci Donnie Smith'in ve Jeffrey Kahrs'ın şiirlerini çevirirken beni de davet ettiler sağ olsunlar. Biz o zaman söyleşiden sonra Jeffrey ile sohbet ederken ben demiştim ki Jeffrey'e, ya aklımda birkaç şair var, onları İngilizceye çevirmek istiyorum, yardım eder misin? Olur bakarız falan diye geçiştirmişti o zaman beni. Aradan yıllar geçti, birden bir mail aldım. Herhalde pandemi sırasında Jeffrey'nin canı sıkılmış olacak ki hadi gel yapalım şu çeviriyi dedi. Ve başladık. Anıl Cihan'ı çevirdik önce. Sonra benim aklımdaki adam Bekir Dıdır'dı. Onu çevirdik. Sonra dedik ki ya niye devam etmiyoruz? Haftanın 1-2 günü Zoom yaparız. Ben kabasını alırım. İngilizceye çevirmeye çalışırım. Sonra beraber sen İngilizce tekrar kurarsın o şiiri. Ve böyle başladık. Şimdiye kadar 40'a yakın şair çevirdik. Genellikle de yaşayan şairlerle çalıştık. Çünkü sıkıştığımız zaman onlara sorarız dedik. Sorduk da, iletişim içinde olduk çevirdiğimiz şairlerle. Bazen yanıt verdiler, bazen yanıt vermediler. Ama bence iyi bir iş çıkardık. İşin bu zevkli tarafıydı, sıkıcı tarafı onları yayınlatmaya çalışmaktı. O işi tamamen Jeffrey üstlendi. Submissions bir sürü böyle yerlere gönderdik. Yaklaşık 10'a yakını iyi dergilerde, hem çevrim içi hem basılı dergilerde yayınlandı. Hazırladığımız seçki, kadın şairler seçkisi yayıma hazır vaziyette bekliyor. Bazı kitapların, bazı şairlerin bütün kitabını çevirdik. Mesela Bejan Matur'un Dünya Güzeldir Halasını çevirdik. Erkut Tokman'ın Lupok'unu böyle delice bir işti ama böyle çok zevkli, eğlenerek yaptık onu da. Selahattin Yolgiden'in bir şiir kitabını olduğu gibi çevirdik. En zor oydu galiba çevirdiklerimiz arasında. Böyle çalışmaya devam edeceğiz sonuçta. Şimdi ben aslında kendime çevirmen demeye çok utanıyorum doğrusu. Hani ben çevirtmenim desem daha doğru olur. Ben çevirttiriyorum aslında. İngilizceye doğru çeviri yapacak kadar yetkin değilim tabii ki. Ama ana dili İngilizce olan birisi bir de şair olunca bence sonuç iyi oluyor. Yani karar tabii okurların olacak. Adnan Benk'in bir tanımı var. Benim gibi çevirmenlere o çevirgen diyor. Böyle ısırgan ya da kemirgen gibi. Yani böyle çeviriye çok istekli olma durumunda olanlara. Cevat Hoca'dan öğrendim bunu. Bu arada Cevat Çapan'a da acil şifalar diliyoruz. Biraz rahatsız bugünlerde. Yine Adnan Benk'ten söz etmişken onun bir yaklaşımı var. Şairin hayatı, şairin kimliği üzerinde çok durmayın. Metne odaklanın. Cevat Hoca da ona pösteki saymak diyor. Ben bu kitabı hani pösteki sayacak kadar çok okudum. Çevirmeni Göksen'in Abdal'a da teşekkürlerimizi sunalım. Jeffrey ile epey bir çalıştılar. Ben de son okumalarını yaptım diyeyim. Son düzeltilerini yaptım. Şimdi hani bu noktada şairden bahsetmeyelim derken Adnan Menk belki de ekspatları ya da Jeffrey gibi tuhaf bir açıdan bakan yabancı demeyeyim ama yerli olmayan diyeyim şairler için söylememiştir bunu. Jeffrey Kahrs'ı bir kendi ağzından kendisini anlatmasını istiyorum. Jeffrey, who is Jeffrey Kahrs?
Who is Jeffrey Kahrs? I came from an educated background. My parents, though, one was an immigrant's daughter and the other was a farmer and a contractor, someone who worked on houses. So they were both they weren't rich by any means, but they ended up in Europe. My dad was working for Aramco, American Arabian Oil Company, designing housing in the Saudi Arabian desert. And my mom had been an art history major and loved Italy, Renaissance work and so forth. So they were in Rome for a while, and then I was born in Holland. And no, I don't speak Dutch. I was only 4 months old when I left. So that's unfortunate, but what's a person to do? Traveling was always, the idea of going abroad was always a part of my life, though, because of that. Because we had books around from Rome and from Holland, picture books, of course, not in the language, showing these places. So the idea of going abroad was always something I had in my mind. I have lived a couple of different sorts of lives. I hitchhiked across Europe. I was a commercial fisherman in Alaska. I came to Turkey. I was a teacher here for almost 20 years. And you know, I got in sales actually when I got back to the States because I needed a job. And, you know, you have to make a living. That's what I've learned.
Please tell us why Turkey, why Turkish language?
It just came up, really. I didn't know much about the country before I came. I mean, I knew it was part of Rome, the Roman Empire, and a few things like that, but I really didn't know anything. I can remember being in Alaska, working on a fishing boat, and wondering how I was going to use silverware because I'm left-handed. And I thought I would, you know, if I had to eat with the you know, the unclean hand, I might be in trouble, right? Well, of course, this is, you know, obviously a preconception, or it was just, I didn't know what to expect. And of course, when I got here, it was something quite different from that initial image and from many of my images afterwards. You kind of go through stages when you come and live in another country for a while. I mean, I found I was exhilarated to be in Turkey. I thought it was the greatest thing for several years, and then there were things that happened that you know, made me unhappy, and then I got through that, and you know, things kind of slowly but surely you reach a kind of equilibrium. It isn't so romanticized. You don't romanticize where you live, but on the other hand, you don't disparage it. You don't look down on it. You try to find a middle ground where you can live in it that's not so different from living in the States, to be honest.
Okay, because before coming to the text, I mean the poems, can you say something, can you compare the languages and together with the maybe readers, Turkish reader and English language readers, poetry readers, I mean. What are the differences? What are the similarities?
Well, I think that the thing that strikes me immediately is that English is a much more direct language. It uses the active voice rather than the passive voice. And that Turkish has a lot of honorifics, and like in your introduction, you're thanking everyone, you're going down a list of people, and of course you thank people in the States, but it'd be a much shorter thing, because that's just the cultural and the language at work. And you know, when we worked in translation, there were things like in Turkish poetry where they would leave parts of it out, or you wouldn't know the pronoun gender of the person because they wouldn't identify it, or you wouldn't know it because O in Turkish could be he, she, it, you know, and you have the mish tense, which is any reported speech in English, which is like something else. And then it works the other way too, where, you know, how do you do phrasal verbs? How do you translate phrasal verbs into Turkish? It's very difficult. And trying to get kids to use phrasal verbs is almost impossible because it just feels so foreign. So, of course, there's some incredible differences in the language and sometimes great similarities. It's just when you're going through it, you know, one thing in Turkish is the abstractions of the language are different, really different. And the soyut, you know. And, you know, in English, it's kind of a more empirical language, I'd say. It's more linear.
And by saying this, you mean also the English readers' expectations from poetry, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can't, you know, you can't literally translate poetry. It just doesn't work. It's a fool's errand, as we would say. You can't literally do it. But there are parts of it that are literal, of course, and there are parts of it that just won't move into the other language. Like sometimes when you have an expression in English, I mean, how would you translate in English, you look like your boat just sank in the Black Sea? Yeah? Well, I mean, you could say something like, you look like your boat sank, right? But you obviously have to cut out the Black Sea. And, I mean, well, if you could leave it in for humor, I suppose, that's possible. Oh, but there's even like eşek hoşaften neyanlar, you know. I mean, what does a donkey know about fruit compote? I mean, this is like, that doesn't really translate so well, right? First of all, the donkey doesn't have the same importance in English that it does in Turkish, because there's lots of donkey stuff going on in Turkish. And and you know, it just, these things are different, and some are the same.
Finding equivalent phrasal verbs
Right.
is almost impossible. Sometimes we had to change the image or the meaning, sometimes even, to find the correct English strong words and equivalent things. And one of the most challenging area is the vocabulary. Sometimes Turkish words are ambiguous, and poets specifically left that word with many meanings. And we had to choose one of the meanings in English.
In English, yeah. Sure.
That was one of our challenges, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, the language is kind of, I mean, English is quite, in my opinion anyway, quite a linear language. It goes on a line, you know. There was a thing about, you know, people used to say, oh, Turkish is like a train because you have so many suffixes, they're like train cars. But in fact, English is more like a train, because English always goes in a very sort of linear fashion. And this is true of the poetry too. And it's true of my poetry too. I think that's true. Whereas in Turkish, it's a language, we've talked about this, where it moves up and down. It's as if you had a trunk of a tree and the words could connect organically that way. But you know, one word in Turkish may have, you know, many English meanings. I use the example of akala, you know, there's akala, zeki, kurnaz, and these
good manner,
akıl, uslu, for intelligence. But you go to word hippo on the internet, which is a great source for dictionary, meaning suffixes, I mean synonyms and antonyms. And it's like there's all these words for intelligence. I mean, tons of them, right?
Tons of them. And so, we have to choose one of them. But if the poets resist that only meaning, we had to add lines to cover all other meanings. Otherwise, sometimes the sub-context, the side meanings are important for the poet.
Absolutely.
So we have to add something.
Yeah, and we'll add a line that will then reflect another line farther up, and that's the way it is.
Thank you. Yeah, before coming the question, where is the far shore in your mind, in your heart? Please read us your poem, page 14. I know you said.
Okay.
After your reading, let us talk about where is the far shore.
Okay. I know you said. Static is the inevitable and frightening position of placing my ear to the shell of our conversation. Knowing who we are dismembers our words, breaks apart our timber, makes terra incognito a known fact. This is how we sailed round every headland, to face the headwind, and still it sounds less like the rocks than the splash in the great pond we are exquisitely transforming into ripples of ourselves.
Ben de Türkçesini okuyayım. Kayıtlar için herkes belki kitap sahibi olamayacak. Belki hepsini okumayacağız. Hepsinin Türkçesini okumayacağız belki ama. Dediğini biliyorum diye başlığı var. Durağan kaçınılmaz olandır ve konuşurken kulağımı deniz kabuğuna dayadığımda içime oturan korku. Kim olduğumuzu bilmek sözlerimizi parçalıyor, tınımızı bozuyor. Bilinen bir gerçek oluyor terra incognita. Bundandır her burnun etrafında rüzgara karşı yelken açmamız. Ve yine daha az andırıyor kayaların sesini, su sıçraması büyük gölette, zarifçe. Dalgaya benziyoruz kendimizden kopup. Now Jeff, where is the far shore? Terra cognita, where is that terra cognita?
Terra incognita, it's the land that isn't recognized. Because when you're looking at a shore in some distance, it's never clear. You're always, like when I was on the boats in Alaska, going up to Alaska or fishing in Alaska, you go by shoreline, and sometimes it'd be very clear. You could see the beauty of the rocks on the shore. If it was a narrow passage, you could see the trees, and everything was very clear. But then at other times, in wider bodies of water, it's harder to see. And I think about the far shore too as looking at, like in Istanbul, if you're in Europe, you look at Asia. If you're in Asia, you look at Europe. And what's happening in one place or the other is not necessarily clear. But this particular poem is sort of a mystical experience. I feel very close to the sea. From my years working at sea, and my love for it, I think, came out in this poem. The sea as a sort of a metaphysical place, a place of great feeling. And
coming from 12 years of experience as a fisherman,
yeah,
and then. Your experiences in Bosphorus, in Istanbul,
right,
between two continents, you came your metaphysical place, metaphysical land. Some literature men called that terra incognita as ejderlerin ülkesi, land of dragons, because unknown place.
Yes, unknown place, exactly.
This poem maybe represents a whole poetry book rather than the poem, your long poem, The Far Shore, which gives the name of the book.
Well, they're very different poems. I mean, this poem is about these the elements of the sea and our relationship to it on a kind of higher level. The Far Shore as a poem is very personal. It's talking about how I came here. And this poem, I know you said, is not so much about that. It's about the moment we spend in meditation on the nature of the sea and its existence in ourselves and in others. After all, our bodies are, 75% water. So there you go. Let's do page 34.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's another sea poem, or 36 rather. Let's go to 36.
36, okay.
Yeah, Dying Light.
Dying Light.
Because it is about the sea, and it's a different approach to it from the poem we just read. This one is called Dying Light. It isn't. The shuttling loom laces clouds with dusty red lines. As a deckhand pulls on the thread, and we go into the Bosporus's undulating ripples of light. Like any seaman, he knows the confident, steady walk of calm water as he clambers up the stairs to the wheelhouse and waits till it's time to tie to the bulwarks on the dock. So it is with light, ferried to and from transformers and darkness, dyeing its strands and spinning our days.
Ya bunun çevirisi çok güzel oldu. Okuyayım mı? Kısa bir şiir zaten. Ölen Işık adı. Çok romantik. Hani Jeffrey, you're not very romantic man, but this poem is so romantic. Ölen Işık. Değil. İleri geri giden ilmek, göğü tozlu, kırmızı çizgilerle örüyor. Güverte tayfası halatı toplarken boğaz içine yol alıyoruz. Dalga dalga ışık huzmelerine doğru. Adamın tanıdığı denizci gibi mağrur, kendinden emin akıyor su. Merdivenleri üçer beşer çıkıyor. Kaptan köşküne ve bekliyor. iskele babalarına bağlanma zamanı gelene dek, rıhtımdaki. Bu yüzden ışıkla oluyor karşıya geçiş, dönüşler ve karanlıkla. Akıntıları öldürüp günlerimizi fırıl fırıl döndüren.
That's interesting. You know, in Turkish, they like to repeat words twice.
Yeah.
And of course, in the English, is none of that. So translation
Yes,
again.
Yesterday we were at Yeditepe University, and we talk about those, we call it in Turkish ikileme, fırıl fırıl, kırıla kırıla, gide gele, those kind of ikileme. How can we translate ikileme in English?
Well, it adds emphasis to the meaning or the emotion or you know.
Repeating the same word to make it more strong.
To give it strength.
And at the same time, giving a time, a tense, a continuing thing. That meaning is also hidden under those repetitions. Yet translating them into English almost impossible. You can't repeat it in the same way. But when we say in English, in Turkish, we strengthen the meaning. Yani anlamı bayağı kuvvetlendiriyor. Bir de üstelik zaman şeyi ekliyor. Bir sürekliliğini hissediyoruz o ikilemelerde. You know what I see odd. It is difficult to read at first time. It is my maybe 50th time, maybe 60 times I read it, but I still have difficulties with the line breaks. In contemporary poetry too, some poets like to break the line in the middle of the sentence, in the middle of the idea, and the reader gets some difficulty to read it at first time. Why you break them?
Well, line breaks, a lot of times you end with a strong image at the end of a line break. So it's like an adjective and a noun. That's one reason. And it's like, oh, nice image, where's it going? And then you go to the next line. And the other thing is you can use line breaks as a question mark to ask the reader to say, what comes next? Now, personally, I like line breaks just fine. And I would stand by them any day of the week. Line breaks, it's like using commas. I mean, if you have line breaks, you don't really have to use a comma. Line will do the work itself.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's modern poetry. That's postmodern poetry. That's everything. Nothing wrong with commas, mind you. I love commas. Some of my best friends are commas. Yeah.
But I think you can create the rhythm or the speed of the reading, cutting the sentence with line breaks.
Well, the thing too is if you work with a long line in a poem, it's going to slow it down too. A longer line, it reads more like prose. It's kind of like you have to go like this. But if you're cutting it too, you're actually increasing the speed which the poem reads at if you're willing to not worry about thinking about the meaning.
Yeah.
You have to keep going with it. Yeah, that's the key thing. If your mind stops, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean to do that. And yeah, that's what I would say.
As I said, if you have any questions in any time, you can interrupt us. We will be happy.
Let's go on to a story.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I want to read this is to show you that I am an idealist. Yeah, yeah. Or a romantic. I have my romantic ideas about politics and life in general. And contrary, he thinks I'm not at all romantic. Well, that's because I was never involved in a relationship with him. If I had, surely it would have been romantic. Yeah. Anyway, this poem too. All the poems have their own history. A lot of times, when I was younger, and some of the poems in this book, I'd write them and I think, oh, that's no good, because I was judging myself. probably too hard, actually, now that I realize it. And I'd let the poem sit for years. And then suddenly I'd say, oh yeah, that's okay. It's not a bad poem. Like I just gave Mete a poem that was published in Sözcükler. In translation, I wrote in 1994 in a journal. I forgot about it. And I found it, I said, oh, that's okay. It's not so bad, yeah. So this is not one of those poems. This was a poem written right around Gezi, right after the Gezi protests. And so it's very much a poem that has a certain feeling. I wasn't living in Turkey then, but I hadn't been gone very long. And it was, yeah, I mean, it was just kind of an outpouring. And I'm proud of it, and it's been published in a couple of different, like German, Italian, French, and of course Turkish too. So it's called A Story. I held my tongue till I couldn't taste anything. It wasn't always like this. I hoped for the rise of tolerant reason from beyond the shadow of guns. But the government began erasing any word that didn't come from their dictionary. I waited and fed as they gave us token morsels. Besides, who else was there to believe in? Then their billy clubs bashed in heads and pepper gas billowed like great sails. It was brutal. But at least the wind began in tears and my tongue regained its feeling. I could taste the chanting voices. Who expects miracles? I don't. But this was my chance to let go of my tongue. I have done this.
Yeah, my question here is, you made a connection between the tongue, between the language, and between that terror, the extraordinary power against civil people. Can you please paraphrase the tongue, the language, and connection between that event and with the language itself? Do you see any terror in the language too, or what is that?
Well, the language is an expression of terror. I mean, if you like this poem, I guess if you don't think the poem has terror, then I can't. I'm sorry, but you know, I mean, it could be about it. It could be a lot of fears that I think it's a general poem. It's not about specifically Gezi, actually, and it's what inspired it. But it could be about America in Donald Trump's time too. People are worried now, right, in the States, about how much they can use their tongue.
Yes.
People who demonstrated against what's happening in Gaza have been arrested because they were not citizens, they were green card, or they're coming up for citizenship. So all these things, you know, they're in that situation because they use their tongues, okay, in different ways. Yeah.
Good to know. And now I remember our, Slobodan page, my close friend. He always says, anything happened in a time can be a story. Jeffrey, you wrote a story, but in poetry. You change it. You create a poetry from that event, from that news, from that story. Indeed, your poetry is grammatical and looks like text, but there is a poem, and you find it. Congratulations.
Well, I think that in the English language poetry, it's a little different in that way. We tend to be more linear, and we tend to ground our writing in physical events. This is the way we're trained, and it's the way modernism has come about in the English language. I mean, if you read, like on the West Coast, I mean, Gary Schneider or Kenneth Rexroth or Robert Duncan is little bit different, but a lot of these people that when I was young, I was reading, you know, they very much work with a kind of physical universe. Now you have postmodern work now that is doing something different than narrative. You know, I mean, straight narrative, never. They're playing with it. They're doing different kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, you know, the different Turkish is such a different language in that way than English. It's, you know, the whole poetic tradition. I mean, you know, it wasn't so long ago there, you know, you had a choice of basically two things in Turkish. You had the Ottoman sort of lyric, you know, ghazals and things like that, and then you had kind of the halk poetry and the poetry of the Ozan in Anatolia. And, you know, these are all things in English language poetry and song, too, I might add. But the development period is very different. The way things have developed in the two countries is quite different. Yeah, I'd say the Garip school, you know, Orhan Veli and Oktay Rifat, and these people are in some ways closer to American modernist poetry. Right. Yeah, I'd say that.
Then we had second new. And maybe this is a good point to ask you. Right. This book is bilingual. Turkish and English side by side you can read. Why is like that?
Why make it bilingual?
Yes, what is the reason? And by doing this, printed in Turkey,
right.
How do you think you can integrate it with the Turkish poetry, with the articulated in? It is now in Turkish, and the content is about Turkey, about Istanbul, and somehow you are going to be integrated into Turkish poetry somehow. What do you think about it?
I hope so. I mean, but I am an outsider, you know. I don't. I mean, even if my Turkish was superb, which I might add it is not, you know, I would still have been coming from a very different cultural background, and I accept that. That's fine. There's not a problem, you know. It's an advantage sometimes. It enables you to step back and see things more clearly. You know, de Tocqueville wrote one of the great books about the United States in the 19th century, and he wrote it in French, because he was French, so distance is not a bad thing. You don't have to be in the middle of a culture. Sometimes it's better to be looking at it, and you know, I hope that Turkish writers enjoy the book and get a lot out of it, but I don't pretend to be. I am a flaneur, you know. I am an observer. I am wandering the streets. I'm picking up little bits and pieces. A lot of my books like that. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Maybe bombings or.
Yeah, let's do the bombing, and each one of these poems has a story. Obviously, the bombing is based on the bombing. I think it happened in 2003. I was in Maslak, ISA, and at the Ishik campus teaching on the top floor there. And all of a sudden, one of the students goes, "Look, smoke!" And there was smoke coming from the HSBC building in Levant. And you could, and all of a sudden, the whole class panics. And of course, people were upset, and they were running around and trying to call on the phone, and people couldn't get a hold of people on the phone line because they all had cell phones even then. And so I was
2003.
Yeah. And so the head of my program, I was teaching business English. He said, "You should just stay in your office for a while and wait and see what happens," because nobody knew what was going on. And so I sat in my office for a while.
Al-Qaeda's signature bombing, two bombings at the same time,
Right.
so people really affected.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was kind of an unexpected event, because everybody thought when AK Party was in, this kind of thing wouldn't happen, and then that happened. Anyway, so the bombing is the poem. Sun was draped on the courtyard wall. Not a breath's worth of breeze turned in the air, and the winter sun lay written above it, pale and perfect as light blue glass. A loud thunk penetrated the windows, and distant smoke rose. Students gathered to watch at the window. Mobile phones went off like firecrackers to the sound of panicked voices and tears. Everyone left. The building was empty. I sat and listened to it for hours.
Yani şiirin sonu öyle bir bitiyor ki ilk neredeyse iki uzun kıtada bir izlenim, bir gözlem var. Olayın nasıl olduğu, insanların nasıl etkilendiği falan. Sonra herkes gitti. Kimse kalmadı binada. Oturdum ve dinledim olanları. Dinledim olanları saatlerce. Ve şiir burada bitiyor. You listen to the sounds, you sat, and the poem is ended there. Maybe it's in perfect place as a poem. If it is a news, if it is a report, if it is a text, novel, maybe everything will be start from that point. That's why I like the last lines. Your way of ending the poem.
Right.
You know what time you stop.
I knew when to stop.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's informational, and then the emotional response, sitting in my office, listening, playing the sounds of what had happened over in my mind. Yeah.
Just as a matter of curiosity, at that time, at that very moment, you take notes of your observations?
Not at that very moment. I just wrote the poem. I guess that's notes of a sort. But it's not like on your phone nowadays where you just take I take endless notes on my phone.
Many poets in Turkey, including me, even in Gezi events or in these bombings, I didn't write anything about it. That's my fault indeed.
It's not a fault.
But Jeffrey's way of writing, way of thinking is different, really, remarkable. Right after the event or at the same time, you're taking notes, maybe voice records, then you try to write them down and try to create your poem.
There were a couple of failed attempts. I think I wrote 2 bad poems on Gezi before I finally hit on this one. And the thing was, too, remember I was talking about distance. I'm in America when I'm writing this. So having some distance from it emotionally and all that probably helps the writing, helps me. I mean, I felt very emotional about it, but I was a long ways away. And that probably helps too, to be honest. I didn't have a voice recorder, but, you know, I just work. That poem doesn't work. Okay, let's throw it out. Let's get another one. Let's start writing again. Yeah.
You know, when you're in a forest, you can see the tree, but you can't see the forest.
Right.
When you're away from the forest, you can see the forest.
Yeah, and if you get up close, you can see the trees too. Yeah. No, that's true. The forest and the trees. Yeah.
Okay, we have 5 or 10 minutes maximum. Maybe you can read one other poem.
Are there any themes Anybody got any ideas about what themes, love, or do you want to hear about drunk fishermen?
Of course we want to hear that.
Yeah, okay, hold on. This one's kind of a fun poem. I mean, there's, I'll do the one about it's quite simple, it's like a children's thing, and then I'll do Left Behind.
Left Behind?
And I'll do them both at the same time.
What's the page number?
Hold on a minute, I'm trying to find...
I found it.
Yeah, I want to find
126.
Yeah, but I wanted to do the curtain call on page 72.
72.
Because it's fun. It's a fun little poem. Curtain call. Mrs. Rose peeks from behind her curtains at the abandoned house with mismatched windows, the mysterious balcony without a door or a floor, the bulbs plotting spring's return in their pots, the empty lot where the Rottweiler once snarled and chewed his bones. Mrs. Rose knows all the children. She waves and they wave back. When the delivery man comes, she drops a basket by rope to reel in bread and cheese. This is why she loves the sea. Fishermen drunk on beer or raki walk up her street carrying their catch in plastic buckets. From behind my kitchen window, I clap for Mrs. Rose, who returns day after day for her curtain call.
Bu evet, keyifli okuması, hemen okuyayım bunu. Alkışa davet. Gül Hanım arkasından bakar. Terk edilmiş evindeki perdelerin birbiriyle alakasız pencereleri var. Kapısı olmayan gizem dolu bir balkon. Veya bir zemin, lale soğanları işaret eder. Lale soğanları işaret eder saksılarında. Baharın dönüşüne boş arsada eskiden Rottweiler ona buna havlar, kemik çiğnerdi. Gül Hanım bütün çocukları tanır. O el sallayınca onlar da el sallar. Kapıcı geldiğinde sepetini iple aşağı salar. Peynir, ekmeği yukarı çekmek için. Bu yüzden denizi sever. Bira veya rakı içen balıkçılar onun sokağından geçerler. Ellerinde balıklar, plastik kovalarda. Mutfak pencerelerinin arkasından Gül Hanım'ı alkışlıyorum. Perdelerine geri döndüğünde, her saniye çağrıldığında.
This is a good example of how different the languages are, because this poem has a lot of more traditional rhyming in it, and the translation, the Turkish doesn't have really any of that at all. And also, I don't know if the translator caught the kind of compassion or humor I was trying at in it. I'm not certain. I can't be certain.
Yeah, there is a certain humor in it. Maybe I'm not a good reader because of your fault. You're breaking not only lines but also the stanzas. The idea goes on another stanza, so I stop. Sorry.
Yeah, sure, blame me, I don't care. Okay, let's go ahead and do the last one here, Left Behind.
Left Behind is the last poem of this book.
And it's the last poem in the book. The second to last one's about coming back to America, and about, how it's very grounded. And the last line's in that, I have to hear the terrible things people say to each other every day. Because in Turkey, I didn't understand the terrible things people were saying to each other every day. But you go to America, all of a sudden, you got to hear it all again, right? So that's a nice little second to the penultimate poem. It's a good reason for it being there. Left Behind is just, it was one of the first poems I wrote when we were in our writers group in 2001 or 2, and I always loved it because it's a true story. Anyway, let's begin. Left Behind. The forgotten jacket drops from the lit window throws its arms up hopelessly and falls like a leaf through the dull yellow streetlight. It's in the electric company's hands now, a black nylon glimmering that jerks with a stagger before dropping. Everyone reaches to grab the prize, but it lands in between us. This is how it goes. We pick up and give to someone else something that doesn't belong to anyone. It ends up in a house farther away that we've never visited.
Bu şiiri ben çok sevmiştim. Bu şey imgesi, bir ceket düşüyor kuruması için asılmış bir ipten. Şimdi Jeffrey'nin yaşadığı ev, Cliff Anderson'ın Fener'deki evinde de o manzara çok vardır. İtalya'daki gibi evler arasına çekilmiş bir sürü çamaşır ipi vardır. Ve mahalle arasında böyle bayrak gibi sallanan şeyler var, elbiseler, çamaşırlar. Onlardan bir tanesi düşüyor. Böyle bir resim gibi yazmış onu, ışığın nasıl olduğunu falan yazmış. Sonra da ceket hiç tanımadığı bir yere doğru bulunup götürülüyor. The image of this, the story of this poem is
True story.
So it's humoric and
Right.
yeah, true story, a kind of observation maybe, again.
Well, somebody left a jacket behind and they threw it out the window so somebody downstairs could catch it, right? And no one caught it, landed on the ground. And then it turned out it wasn't anyone's jacket. So then it ended up going to someone's house. We'd have no idea whose jacket it was, really.
Where did it happen?
I'm trying to remember. It might have happened outside Mel's house. It was in Galata, somewhere down in Galata. Yeah? I think.
I said in Fener, in Cliffs near neighborhood.
Yeah.
They hang their
Clothes?
nearly clothes.
Oh yeah,
dry.
they do. You see the
Maybe
clothesline.
it is some. But, in my imagination, I picture something like that.
That's fine. Yeah, if you want to imagine a clothesline in Balat, yeah, I saw several. Yeah, no problem. Take it anywhere you want. I mean, the point of a poem is not to have the place always, it's to have you take it somewhere and put it somewhere.
Very good definition. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. That's all my questions, and our time is over.
All right.
If you say something as a last word.
Hi, Mom.
O zaman teşekkür ediyoruz.
Teşekkür.
Sizlere de. Size de teşekkür ediyoruz.
Teşekkürler.